TikTok's rise as a discovery platform, and on the counter, how X is losing ground as a news source.
This episode is brought to you by SocialGenius. That's where Jeff and I get to actually teach you what to do on social and how to grow it. Jeff, why should people join?
If you are the type of professional that wants to do it yourself, and maybe your budget's a little bit lighter and you can't afford to hire somebody to do all the editing, do the fancy stuff for you, we're going to teach you how to do all this stuff. And the truth is, most of these social platforms are now favoring authenticity. So it's shooting these green screens and doing remixes and understanding what's trending. Those are the things that matter the most to your social strategy. And so if you like to be inside of a tight culture of people that are like-minded and want to do it themselves, then SocialGenius is perfect for you.
We'll see you there. You'll never find it for less than this anywhere else. It's very inexpensive. We'll see you on the other side.
Tristan, the future of our world, maybe the now of our world, is seeking news from different outlets. No longer do we sit down and watch News Channel 5 or 4 or whatever the hell they are anymore.
Dude, that's you and me growing up.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, when I see that stuff on TV, I cringe for a minute, watch it for about 30 seconds, and then I'm like, yeah, I can't watch this. And I was noticing this yesterday because it was on after the golf that I was watching, and they were these newscasters, dude. It's so cringy. It's so bad. I'd much rather watch people on social media. And that's where the world is going, which is what the conversation is about today, which is, TikTok's rise as a discovery platform, and on the counter, how X is losing ground as a news source. And so let's talk about that and maybe how that matters to social creators, business owners, etc.
Well, I think we have the advantage, those people that are jumping into social and using it to provide this type of content. I think, dude, I don't remember what episode it was, but it was towards the beginning of us running these episodes. We were talking about how one of the top sources for news is social media. You look at the number one reason people go to Facebook right after finding out what friends and family are doing, it's to read the news. And that has just gone through from Facebook now to TikTok. And the cool thing is when it's video format and you do a pretty decent job bringing localized news, then it starts spreading because no one wants to listen to newscasters. Just like you said, nobody wants to sit through there and go through that whole process of turning on the damn TV and going to the right channel at the right time to listen to the news. That's like a whole different world, man. I want to carry this with me and just type in the search bar, hey, I heard this happen. There's a fire? What's going on in the lake? What's going on? I'm going to the Lake of the Ozarks this weekend. Anything happening? Boom, done. Search. And it's so much easier to get it from social, even more so than getting it from Google, which is crazy. I think, and you brought up Twitter, X. So I remember way back, and you can still see it now, but way back when X first started, 2000, whatever it was, 9, 10, 11, a lot of the local police departments, fire departments, and those types of departments would post up what's happening. In fact, they still do. Hey, there's a theft over here. Hey, we found this person over here. There's a fire over here. And they still report there. But what I'm finding is now some of those are pivoting to video format and saying, hey, there's a fire over here, stay home, or there's an emergency over here, there's a hurricane. And that is now transitioning to TikTok, which is super cool to see. But they're still using, from what I'm watching, they're still using X just less and less. What do you see happening, man? You're into TikTok a lot. Do you use the search area at the top?
Um, I'm not much of a news seeker anyway. But do I? Yes. I mean, the simple answer is yes. I use the search function in Instagram and TikTok a decent amount, actually more and more nowadays, for different purposes. And I guess this is relevant to the conversation because we're talking about it as a news source, but I think it's also a Google source. And so I'll give you a perfect example. In fact, I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, and I said, you know, when we provide content, we'll provide B-roll to be, or I'm sorry, text overlay to be put over B-roll. And I always tell the people that subscribe to my service, like, you don't have to use my B-roll, like use your own B-roll and then just use the text overlay. And so the example was this. I had an article about tiny homes. This is last week. And we do these all the
Mhm.
time. And it was just talking about the top 10 markets, to be a tiny home. So I thought to myself, what would be good B-roll for this? I could just use anything, right? I could use Winter playing on a swing set, right? But I decided I went to Instagram, searched tiny home, and found videos without any text over them and without any logos and stuff. And I just downloaded them, removed the watermarks, and then just put together some B-roll. But that's how I use the search function to go find content to repurpose basically. But I think as we have an election approaching, you're going to see more and more people seeking what they want to hear and see. And this goes back to your post from the weekend talking about, and I'd like you to mention that because it's kind of a perfect segue into that, which is you see what the algorithm assumes you want to see, which then changes kind of how you might feel or believe is the truth. And you could say it more eloquently than I can, but it was so good. I snipped it and shared it. But I think it's something that's important as we talk about how you consume your news, that people need to change kind of their mindset about what they're consuming so they're not. I mean, they already are. The world's getting more and more jaded. But I think
Yeah.
more people need to hear and see what you typed out yesterday or Saturday, whatever day
Yeah.
it was.
Thanks, man. I talked about the echo chamber effect where we tend to have opinions, we all do, and we then layer those opinions with other people's opinions, and then we think that they're facts. And the challenge is that it happens so much on social media because of the algorithm. We gravitate to, and it doesn't matter if it's Biden or Trump, right? Or Palestine or Israel. We gravitate to one, the algorithm notices, and then it continually bombards you with that side of the opinion. And that becomes super dangerous because it's it's just resonating your confirmation bias. It's like, oh yeah, I knew it. I knew that. I knew all blue hats suck, right? I'm just choosing you because you had a blue hat, dude. And just keep on layering. And that's the problem with social media. So this is why I love, Jeff, I love going through and purposefully typing things that I don't agree with. Like, hey, I want to see both sides of this. I want to see what everybody else is talking about. Am I missing something?
Mhm.
Right. And so social media is great, but I think it can be greater if you take the time to look at the other side of things. And remember, you're in a web. Their job, social media's job, is to keep you there long term by making you feel like everything is directed towards you and agreeing with you. Because Jeff, imagine if we were going through and you have a great TikTok channel, Lake of the Ozarks one. And let's say from now on, it kept on showing you things about the desert only. It's like, hey, you want to visit the Sahara? Hey, you want to go to California's deserts? Hey, you want to go to Nevada? Check the deserts out. And it gave you nothing about what you loved. You'd be like, I hate this stupid thing.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, thanks for reminding me, man. I think that is a real problem in the world that we're in, but it also keeps us hooked. And I forgot where I was going with it, Jeff. I just
Well,
thought that it was a good, important point.
I was asking you to explain it because I mean, the way I would describe the evolution of social, and this is very simplistic, is that it started going in a bad direction because of politics.
Oh,
Politics and
yeah,
drama primarily, but let's definitely politics. That's what got Facebook in trouble in the first place. And it has since been controlled. The algorithm's been, I guess you could say, fixed,
better.
but yeah, better. But as you mentioned, I think that when I I don't even know if this is overcomable. Like when you say that people need to do a
Yeah,
better job of, I don't think people want. My first thought was, as you were explaining that, was COVID. Like that was to me like the second
dude.
phase of this evolution, because when we were going through COVID, as we know, it was very divisive in families, mine included. But I went out of my way to say, man, I'm hearing and I'm gonna label my hardcore conservative friends that are very anti the vaccine and very anti, and this is all of, a ploy by China, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously I've got my liberal friends and family that were like, oh my God, you got to hurry up and go get pricked. You can't come around. And if you don't wear a mask and blah, blah, blah. And so I thought to myself, exactly what you just described. I have got to go out and consume, because when I was consuming, the algorithm knew which side I leaned. So it showed me more
Mm,
of that.
mm,
And so I had to go seek the opposite side so I can hear both sides of the story and then form my own opinions, which is what I did. Now,
yeah.
here's the key point. It made no difference to the people on the either extreme side. Even though I came to them and said, I've got some valid arguments to way you're acting
Mm,
and
yeah,
why I'm
yeah.
choosing to do what I'm doing, and they didn't give a shit because they were so far extreme. It's like, screw you, you don't know what you're talking about.
Hmm.
Whatever you listened to or read is bullshit. And they both said that on both sides. And I feel like
That's so true.
we are in a world where we're heading
Yeah.
further and further and further. Like the divide between people is just ridiculously sad. And I mean, I watch it all the time on my TikTok with
Oh, yeah. That actually, dude, it makes sense. I think going back then, taking that argument that you have, which I agree with, going back to the progression of where this is going. So it all started from Google, where let's say you and I had a question about vaccines. Hey,
Mhm.
do vaccines cause, right? And then Google would be like, well, here's your choices. Now the evolution of that is vaccines now pop up on your social. You keep on clicking on the ones that follow your biases, and all of a sudden you no longer have to search on Google. It's just layering the shit
Yeah.
over and over.
Yeah.
And
It's like
that's
it's like
that's the problem.
exaggerating the bias.
Yes. And I think
But
that's where that's where we have to start thinking, how do we interrupt this algorithm? What do I have to do on TikTok and Instagram to just stop it? What do you, dude, what do you do?
well, I don't scroll much. And when I do scroll, it's intentional. So I'm typically searching. So that goes back to this whole search thing. And as it's I'm kind of watching my own evolution of, I rarely go to Google anymore. I perfect example, was on the golf course, late last week, had a tournament. And so I was creating a post, and I told a buddy that my partner, and I was like, I need to go find a good caption for this. And he was like interested. He's not a social guy. And he's like, so how do you do that? And I'm like, oh, I go to ChatGPT. And I'm like, so what do you call that? And I was talking about a big piece of construction equipment. I'm like, what's that called? And he goes, it's called a high lift. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna go type and go watch. I'm gonna go type this in, and it's gonna give me all these different captions and text overlay. And then I
Was
just,
that the
I went a couple.
tractor? Was that the tractor
Yeah,
that you put up after
yeah,
you did bad in
yeah,
golf? I watched, that was funny.
yeah. And it was just, but it was the kind of the point of, is like, now when I go to search for things, my two primary sources are social media and AI. And I'm
Mm.
probably, I don't know, Tristan, you and I are probably, if you rank it in a percentile and it's the 100%, we're probably in the 90th percentile of advanced use of innovation. But I think this is the norm. In 5 years, anybody who's listening to us right now or watching this who's saying to themselves, "Oh, I still very much use Google. I still very much watch local news sources." In 5 years, you won't. You're you're
Yeah,
you're
man.
you're you're going to move forward with everybody else. And in fact, in 5 years, while you're catching up and using social and ChatGPT, we'll be on to the next thing. And then, 5 years later, you'll catch up to that. And
Yeah,
yeah, I don't,
so true.
I think that the biggest, to me, as we ramble about this, which is more just interesting, it's more about, I think, as a entrepreneur, validates what I preach, which is be make make a pillar of content, a weekly content strategy around becoming a local news source, and
Mm.
stop overthinking
Yeah.
it. Just go find the traditional news source, find shit that's interesting, find events, and never ignore anything and everything. Just create every single week, because here's the point, folks. The algorithm knows the audience. It knows where they live, what they want to consume, what they like to do. And if you become that source, all of a sudden you're going to start to penetrate a hell of a lot more feeds, probably gain a hell of a lot more followers. And then when you start talking about whatever it is you sell, which is exactly what's happening to me right now, you can sell shit, and you're going to start to create leads, and people are going to start to reach
Yeah.
out to you. It's a long game, man. It's a long game. But I think I didn't really intend for this conversation to go this way, but that's the biggest point, that if I can bash that into somebody's head, like, that's something that everybody needs you need to lean into it,
Mm.
Tristan.
Mm.
And Malibu, like, you need to go find your new, and I'll tell you this from friend to friend, it's some of the easiest content I make every single week. It's like, I'm going to go to Lake Expo, I'm going to find an article, I'm going to snip some pictures, and then I'm just going to put them behind me and talk about what I'm seeing on my screen. They're so easy to create. You already know this
That's
because you
so
create this
true.
stuff, but you just got to create the habit of going to find the content that already exists and just regurgitating it, because people want to consume it on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc. And so if
That's
you
true.
truly want to dominate a local geographic area, it's the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah. And I think people lack creativity. So use that search or discovery section
Yeah.
on TikTok or Google, right? But on TikTok to be able to find other people that are doing it that can inspire you. So I think that's key. What would you say, Jeff?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Um, and I mean, going back to what you said, which is where I went down a rabbit hole, which is, especially for our listeners, I don't care what political, religious, sexual affiliation you have. Um, but when you go, no matter how strongly you feel about something, be more educated, you know, take the time to do the opposite research and stop being
Mm,
so bullheaded, especially as we head into a very divisive time. And honestly, Tristan, it sparked me. Your post sparked an idea in myself. I'm going to create a video. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about the echo chamber, because I think it's so
mm,
relevant in a political year, in an election year.
dude.
And so I'm
Yeah.
going to create a video about it.
Anybody that thinks that the two parties aren't using social
Oh,
to to help them grow and get votes, dude.
yeah,
They're using it in ways we probably don't even know they're
yeah,
using it.
yeah,
It's like, because
yeah,
think of when we the public discovered that they were doing it in the first place. It was like a few years later, right? This is
yeah,
so nuts.
yeah.
So yeah,
It's
it's
it's the
happening.
future. The way that we've done elections and voting of the past is effectively gone, buried. If any official does not use social media, they are going to create such a disadvantage. Yes, there's going to be some offices, local offices, where tradition still will win. But on the bigger stages, it's going to be the politician who knows and has the best teams behind them, using funnels, using retargeting, all these things that are going to be the politicians that win elections, period, hands down.
Yeah. Spreading the message that they want, whether it's good, bad, or whatever it is. Last thing I wanted to talk about, I know we're short on time, but percentage wise of who is using what search engine. Here we go. We've got this little graphic, which I'm not going to show you, but it says, have consumers ever used TikTok as a search engine? 41% said yes, 59% said no, and 64% of Gen Z use TikTok as a search engine. To me, that's high because you go down the grade here of generations. 49% millennials, 29% Gen Xers, and baby boomers 14%. Here's the biggest eye opener for me. Which platforms did consumers find most helpful when searching for information? Number one, of course, is Google, right? 91% of people use Google, of all the population, right? Of course, everyone practically. But 39% of the population here uses YouTube. So that's a pretty good chunk of people in general. Bing, 21%. I hardly use Bing unless I'm on my PC. And then TikTok, 17%. That's big, man. That ties with DuckDuckGo. And I don't think I use DuckDuckGo much, but 17%. I use TikTok way more than I use Bing. In fact, I think I use TikTok search as much as I use YouTube search.
What are you searching? What are you searching?
I'm searching for what's trending, or real estate, or Malibu, beaches. I'm always searching for ideas. That's what I'm typically searching for. I don't necessarily use it for news unless something happened locally to me. And if I'm like, hey, what happened here? What's this thing everyone's talking about? Then I'll type it in. Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Good question, dude. Good question on that one. Do you search for news at all? Like if somebody's saying something, do you ever, where do you go to typically?
Yeah, probably Google for news. Actually, great example. Great example. Yesterday, we were watching the Travelers Championship, the golf tournament, and there were some protesters that rushed the 18th green when the last three guys were on there.
You should have gone to TikTok for that.
Well, we were sitting, I was sitting with some people, and everybody had the same question. What are they protesting? And I didn't get to my phone fast enough, but whoever got there fast enough, like they quickly looked it up and they said, oh, this tournament's in Boston, and it's people that are, it was something about the environment, and which is, and the reason what, and then we dug deeper, like, well, why are they attacking a golf tournament, quote unquote, attacking? It's because of Travelers. Travelers Insurance owns does or insures like the majority of like oil companies and things like that. So like you had to dig a little deeper, but all you had to do was say, why are people protesting at the Travelers? And done. Got it. Got my information. I don't have to wait. Easy. I don't have to wait for News Channel 5.
That's right. That's the point. Dude, you imagine having to wait for news? No, that's not going to happen.
No, crazy.
Well, that's all we got today.
Yeah, we didn't even get to the latest update on the TikTok ban, which maybe we can cover that next week. And
yeah, let's cover it next week because it's not happening anytime soon.
Yeah, so talk about the latest update. Yep, sounds good. Happy searching.